Hey guys, Sasuke here, and today I'm joined with Prismaticism. Prismat has had a top 8 finish at SCGCon Vegas and Bologna, as well a Best of Draven winner. So, Prismat, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I've just been working on the guide since I got back. It's been grinding it, and hopefully get it out soon.
Amazing. Well, let's just go hop right into it here. We'll start with the battlefields. You have Zon Warren's Obelisk of Power and Reaver's Row. So, without getting into too much detail, let's hear the battlefield choices.
All right, so Zon Warrens, this is like the scrap heap combo battlefield primarily, where you just get reliable access to the discard effect to discard the scrap heap and get free draw. Obelisk of Power is kind of the Draven battlefield, where you bring it when you go second, your opponent chooses to go first, and you get 4 runes on turn 1. You get to just play Draven on turn 1. That's pretty great. And then Reaver's Row is kind of the other Draven battlefield, where because you get to farm combats on Reaver's Row, your opponent doesn't really want to stay there and defend, and you don't have to defend because you get to pull back out, you get to farm cards. That's the battlefield I'm least happy with, though, because this deck doesn't really want to sit there and trade cards with the opponent, because it has so much card draw already. It actually would rather just kill the opponent's units. And also, especially against Aurelia, giving them a way to get their Stellacorn herders out or trigger their Aurelia defensively for extra might is not that great. So I'm thinking about changing that into a Trifarian War Camp is the main option.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Draven is surprisingly a really good hold deck with how many efficient units that it has, so that makes perfect sense to me. Well, with that said, let's just go right into the main deck and the main deck choices. You already briefly touched over the scrap heap. Any other cards that you'd like to really highlight and go over?
Yeah, so there's 3 main parts of the deck. There's the Miracle package, which is the like Called Shot, Seal, Stack Deck, Ezreal, Scrap Heap part. That's like the card draw engine. It just says like, okay, I'm gonna draw my whole deck, see all the cards in my deck pretty quickly, by turn 5 or turn 6. And then there's the big payoff for the deck. That's the Battering Ram, Rasa are the 2 big ones, where Battering Ram's 1 mana, Rasa's 0 mana, but then also like Noxus Hopeful and Nocturne. Those are the big units you flood the board with. And then there's a bunch of utility spells mixed in. The most important one is the Bushwhack. This is it's like Confront from set 1. It's not as good, unfortunately, but you know it's still good enough. Still has the same main effect. Lets you just accelerate all of your units for a turn. So what that means is whether you stacked a battlefield and your opponent cleared it, or your opponent just wiped your entire base out, like they're a Kaisa or a Victor, or you just want to finish the game off on the last turn, you get to do this. You get to dump out 20 might accelerated and just roll over everything on that it's on battlefields.
Makes perfect sense. And then, very notably, there's no Kai'Sa survivor in the list. Just care to briefly touch over that choice?
Yeah, so it is an interesting option. The Ezreal effect can reduce the accelerate cost on Kaisa, so it wouldn't be terrible as maybe a one of. It's something that I think Randy runs in his Miracle Draven list, but it's just hard to find room for it because there's so many strong cards you can fit in the deck, and any card you have even one copy of, you can find very consistently. So having a Kaisa compared to having access to, like, say, a Ferris Forerunner or some other powerful effect, I'm not sure about it.
Well, that makes perfect sense. So, speaking of Ferris Forerunner, we have one of them in the sideboard. Just care to briefly go over the sideboard and explain really all the choices?
Okay, so against the odds, this is for the mirror match. Miracle decks, they like to put out a lot of units and then stack them all on a battlefield. So against the odds can be like +8 might for 2 mana, +10 can be even more than that. So that's like a really strong card. If you think there's a lot of Miracle in your metagame, then you could even bring multiple copies. There are some other matchups where it can be relevant in. There's like RE decks, like other hold decks, um, and against like maybe like an Azir or something like that. But primarily for the mirror match against other Miracle decks. The hard bargain is for any kind of like expensive spell deck, so like Progress Day or Time Warp and Kaisa, Singularity, like Bellows Breath, Imperial Decree combo, and Victor, stuff like that. Overall, I haven't been too happy with the second hard bargain. It's a card that gets worse in multiples, so that's probably going to get switched out, but I'm not sure for what yet. Piercing Light, it's really good against Draven. He's got a lot of units with even numbered mites, 2s and 4s, so it's very efficient dealing with those, and then it's also pretty good at dealing with, again, like Kaisa and Victor, they have a lot of really low might units, and then they try to protect them with spells, so that they don't get into combat, so then Piercing Light can just pick them off. The Rebuke, that's the second Rebuke, and the Bryn here, those are mainly for Aurelia, but also for any other like really vertically stacking deck, like an Ornn, say, or say like a really heavy equipment deck. Against Aurelia, the main goal is get to 6 points first, play the Bryn here, and then just kick the Aurelia out with Rebuke, and then you don't need to even go into a combat with her. But the Rebuke is also very useful earlier on if the Aurelia ever taps out too much, burns too many runes, then you just Rebuke the Aurelia back to hand and you skip their entire next turn. The invert timelines, that's like the tech piece that I'm responsible for, innovated for this deck, is the main goal, the main idea of it initially was on Obelisk of Power, you jump straight to 4 runes, so you never have a window to play Traveling Merchant, which is one of the 2 discard sources in the main deck. So always want to sideboard out the Traveling Merchants, but if they go out, then there's less discard sources for scrap heaps, and that makes them less consistent. But bringing in invert timelines instead of one of the merchants means that you get another discard effect, and then you can start playing around it by emptying your hand out and then holding onto the scrap heaps and setting up for the invert. And even in situations where you have a big hand, you don't want to play the invert or your opponent's running out of cards, you can discard it, and then later on, if the situation changes, Fizz can also replay it. So it's very strong for that. And then it also turned out that it's useful in a lot of matchups. It's good in like the Miracle matchup where the opponent has a lot of cards in hand. Useful against like any deck like Progress Day Kaisa, any deck that tries to draw a lot of cards have a big hand, Ezreal decks as well. And then the Ferris Forerunner. Basically, the only counter to this card in the game is Rebuke. So it comes in against any deck that's in purple because they can't have Rebuke. But even against decks that do have purple, they don't want to keep Rebuke in because the main deck of the list, there's no good targets for it. The most expensive unit in the deck is like 4. So there's just no good target for Rebuke. And then the Mind Splitter is there for slower matchups, and it's also good on the Obelisk game. It can be difficult to get up to 7 runes with this deck because you are burning through runes each turn, especially like if you miss on the seals or your opponent destroys them. But on the Obelisk game, it's a lot easier to get up to 7, and then there are some matchups that are a lot slower, and where the hand information is a lot more valuable, like Aurelia and Draven, where the Mind Splitter can just come down, and then it can solve a lot of problems.
Well, thank you so much for going over that for me. Are there any other changes that you might make to the list, and why?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Trifarian War Camp. Another change, one of the 2 hard bargains is going to get cut out, most likely. I want to put a 3rd Fight or Flight into the main deck. I think that card's really strong. And then for the sideboard, I might want to put in a 2nd Ferris Forerunner, is possible. Yeah, something else for the sideboard. So yeah, it's either the hard bargain in the main deck turns into a 3rd Fight or Flight, or the hard bargain in the sideboard turns into another sideboard card. And then maybe I might also put one of the Bushwhacks into the sideboard. I'm not sure about that, but I am finding that the 2nd Bushwhack is there for matchups that are less common than matchups where you only want 1 Bushwhack. So it would be better to have 1 Bushwhack in the sideboard and then have an extra main deck slot.
Makes sense. All right, well, I think that's it for us here. But before you go, any shout outs you want to give, or any shout outs for yourself that you'd like to give?
Yeah, so shoutouts to like my team. Really great players. Like I wouldn't be this good, this successful without having good players to practice with. So Alan ZQ, uh, Freaks, Randy, Kuvi, Duo Fannel, Punk Monks, and Casanova. All really great teammates and practice partners and friends. And yeah, shout out to them.
Great. And then where can we find you?
So you can find me on metafy.gg/@prismaticism and Twitter @prismaticismism and twitch.tv/prismat. I stream like some tournament reviews and then also like online tournaments.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Prismat. And for those that are interested, the links will be in the description below. So if you want to find Prismat, they will be all available down there for you. And with that, guys, we'll see you next time.